As we were landing, all I hear is terrain, 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 terrain. And I'm like, I just hope that's the runway.
Yeah.
I got to see one World War II shipwreck. It was like if everybody in the state fair of Minnesota was on a moped or a small vehicle. Like just no traffic lights. There's no median in the middle of the highways, so people would just pull U-turns in the middle of the interstate. No sidewalks, so everyone's walking with the traffic or against the traffic or across traffic all at the same time. She's the most driven, successful woman I've ever met, most beautiful, talented, and yet somehow she's also like the most humble.
I'm talking to Wyatt Amdahl about his life, goals, what it's been like traveling across all of Asia. He is a really genuinely interesting person who's from the same hometown as me. And we met up just spontaneously in Chaing Mai, Thailand. So we were sat down and recorded an 1.5 hour long podcast. So feel free to watch. I'm leaving timestamps throughout so you can skip around. We start out talking about his career and then move into his travels, life goals, what he's seen over here. So we kind of jumped all around, so I hope you enjoy it. I think we're rolling.
All right.
So where are we at?
We are in Chaing Mai, Thailand.
How'd we get here?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how you and your grandpa got here, but I just got off a night bus from Bangkok, and I came from an island further south, took an 8-hour bus ride up to Bangkok, and within 48 hours, I took the 10-hour bus up to here.
All night?
All night, yep. Just classic, charter bus, just like if you were going to a football game or sporting event.
And bus, nice?
It was pretty nice. Seemed like they had just taken like a leather seat cover and put it over the standard carpet smell like you probably remember from like a 6th grade field trip. It probably smells like random fluids and dust and rotting foam.
The seat covers have that kind of like 90s seat cover feel, like the International Falls buses had.
Yeah, or maybe like old movie theater seats.
Okay. And then was there a bathroom on the bus?
The one I took last night, there wasn't, but I opted for the VIP version when I was coming up from Koh Tao to Bangkok, and that one had a bathroom, but the most recent one I was actually glad it didn't have a bathroom.
Really?
Saved from any of the smells kind of lingering around in the bus with every time the driver hit the brakes.
Okay. And when you had to stop, did they stop for bathroom breaks?
Stopped once around 2 a.m. and I was so tired that I decided I could hold my bladder for the 4 hours I had left of the trip.
You didn't have to wear Depends?
No.
No Depends. Okay. Yeah, on the way here, we took a bus here too, and it was just a hole, basically.
Yeah.
With a ladle. Almost impossible.
Yeah, I didn't even check out the bathroom in the bus that had one, just based off the smell, about 20 rows ahead of where the bathroom was. So.
You've taken buses like that before across Asia?
Yeah, I a lot of the traveling I've done since I arrived in Malaysia from Sri Lanka has been like hiring a cab, which was basically like a school van, and all of those were pretty smooth, but obviously no bathrooms on those and a lot closer quarters.
In Malaysia, what's Malaysia?
Malaysia is directly south of Thailand, and it's split up between some of the country's islands, and some right directly below Thailand is the mainland.
Okay, so it's the kind of the island chain as Malaysia.
Yeah, it's right near Indonesia.
Okay. So take me back. So before this trip, right? Give me a little context, just kind of like growing up. Where'd you grow up? What'd you do? Kind of the Wyatt story.
All right. I grew up in International Falls, was family of 4 kids. I was the only boy, so a lot of time at the hunting shack, a lot of time fishing, summer camp at Camp Kuching, and that sparked a lot of my love for the outdoors and nature. And so did graduate in 2018 from Falls High School, went down to the Twin Cities to the University of St. Thomas to get my undergrad degree in exercise science. Found out at a very early age what I wanted to do for a career, which was become a physical therapist. And I recently just graduated with my doctorate and decided, why jump right into work when I could go take the time to travel. So recently I've been living in California out of a converted Sprinter van with my wife, and we do a lot of travel in the US, but since she's away for work, I decided, why not use that time to explore all the world that I haven't seen and just expand my cultural horizons, as well as taking a lot of time to like reset both physically and mentally before jumping into my career.
Before getting into the thick of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That can be a lot.
Yeah.
You finish school sucks to go through.
Yes.
Been there.
Yeah.
Been there. School can be this just constant like, so it's time to unwind, do this just kind of crazy trip, backpack, roughing it. That's so cool. And when you were growing up, track was your primary sport, right?
Track was one of the sports I definitely loved. I played football and hockey as well, but track was something that I felt was kind of fit my unique personality as a unique sport of pole vaulting. And instead of relying on like teammates and like a team sport, it was both a team sport in the fact that you have all of your teammates, and then I have the events that I'm responsible for to contribute to that team. And during those events, it's like you versus yourself. So it was kind of a unique sport in that way. And I fell in love with the sport of pole vaulting. So I was able to go on, and fortunate enough to do that in college, and just kind of having a good time doing something other than just school.
Why pole vaulting? You like long poles or jumping, or is it a combination of both?
I think a lot of what got me hooked on pole vaulting was the kind of like the risk involved with it, and then also the feeling you get when you're fully upside down and the pole is shooting you straight up, like feet first, and then you're just looking back at the track that you just ran down, and you have this like weightless feeling of just getting shot up, like almost like a roller coaster feeling. I don't know if anyone's done like the Steel Venom ride at Valley Fair.
Yeah.
But, like that moment of just getting like shot up, and then you feel weightless and you just like fall backwards. Very similar feeling in pole vault, except you don't have to spend the $100 to go to Valley Fair. You just have to run like 100 feet and put all your effort into bending a pole.
Are you kind of like a cat? You always know which way's down?
If you're lucky, yeah. And hopefully the direction that's down has a mat where you're going. But yeah, it's a very unnatural thing that you, with enough practice, becomes more natural. So
you ever have a pole like break on you? I watch a lot of like YouTube videos. It's probably my worst trait. I watch way too much YouTube, and I'm always seeing compilations of like the poles snap in half.
Yeah, I've broken only one pole, and it's likely just due to a defect in the pole, but
not because of too much skill.
Definitely not. And so like it does happen, but luckily in high school and college I had very safe and like high level coaches.
Right.
So always made sure we had best equipment and training. So
why do poles break usually?
Well, most people use fiberglass poles. So you're taking something essentially made out of glass, bending it to 90 degrees, and then letting it fully recoil back to straight. And if there's any defect or crack or blemish in that pole, then that's the weak point, and it always has a way of finding that weak spot, and could only take someone stepping on it with a pole vault, like a shoe spike, and
that's all it takes.
Yeah. And so people that travel all over the world with their poles, it's scary to think that they're jumping 19 feet, whereas best I could do is like 15 feet. Right. And so they're throwing themselves way higher than I ever did, and they're just trusting like a random airline to ship their poles to another country without causing any damage to them.
Okay. And if there was like I'll call it the McChicken index. So how many McChickens would be equivalent to buying a pole vault pole? You think?
Like you can get a cheaper, like, maybe with like a meal deal, like 1,000 McChickens.
1,000 McChickens?
But the pros, they're doing like the McDouble, they're very expensive
Jeez.
and you're not ever using just one. So, it's like minimum of maybe 3 poles and a meat. So,
Okay.
McChicken for every meal of the day. Just
1,000 McChickens for one pole?
Yeah.
And is this assuming like 2008 McChickens, or is this like nowadays $3 McChickens?
The original $1 McChickens.
Okay. Got it. That's a really roundabout way of figuring out pole prices, but it works for me. So in high school, pole vaulted, and then you were doing PSEO, right?
Yep.
And then did somebody go scout you out, like a Nike person comes out and says, "That's Wyatt Amdahl. He knows his poles."
Not quite up in International Falls. Didn't have much for scouts up there, but track's a very unique sport. There's not a lot of people that are recruiting necessarily for it, but individuals are able to go outside of the team sport and compete individually. So that allows them to kind of make a name for themselves and make it easy for colleges to then say, "Oh yeah, I've seen him vault at this elite meet or this like the state meet." Versus with team sports, you could be the best hockey player in Minnesota, but if your team doesn't go to the state championship, the scouts might not even really have an idea of how good you are at your sport. So track has a very unique way of allowing people to kind of diversify in the events that might suit them best as an athlete.
Okay. So you kind of got your name out there, different events, then you applied to St. Thomas, right?
Yep.
And did you have to try out for the track team there?
I didn't for my first 3 years when the school was a Division III school, and then I had to earn my walk-on spot once they transitioned to Division I.
Got it. And you did pretty much full-time. How much time did track take during college?
You always had your morning lifts in the morning, usually twice a week.
Huh.
But going from studying to then waking up at 5:30 in the morning, no one enjoys that.
No.
I don't care how much you like to lift or how much you love your sport. It's just, I don't think anyone enjoys that. And then so hour in the morning and then 2 or 3 hours for practice every day.
Wow.
Yeah, and then work on top of that, studying and stuff. It was almost good to have that busy schedule to allow you to not get off track.
Too much, too little?
I was able to do it, did fine, and got good enough grades to get into a PT program. So
wow,
whatever I managed to pull off worked for me. But
And you'd wake up at what time?
On lift days, only 10 minutes before I lift. I lived on campus every year in the dorms, so I could just run to work whenever I had a shift, or run to the dorm after a practice, no issues. So I wasn't waking up super early before those, but
5, 6.
Yeah, especially every class, you always have an 8 a.m. as a college athlete because you have to get all your classes done before you start practice around 3 o'clock.
Oh wow! So, every day.
Yeah, so even as a senior in college, 8 a.m. every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Wow. And then about 6, 5 you lift, go to class, a couple classes during the day, and then 3 o'clock train until
usually there were at the Division I level you had only so much time that you could practice, so that was almost nice that you couldn't just practice as long as you wanted, that there was a time limit for how much you could practice per day or per week. And it was right after practice directly to the dining hall to go eat, and then usually for me I was either going to work in the athletic training room or going to work as an RA or working at a desk as a study job.
Wow. And when did you study?
That's a good question because it was just whenever you found time, really. Show up to class 20 minutes early, do a little bit of review over your notes, and then at night I was lucky enough to have a desk job where that was a lot of studying.
And that was enough time to be able to flashcards, and I have to put a lot of time into learning the material.
Yeah, I feel I'm the same way of if I study for 3 hours, it's equivalent to someone just looking over stuff for an hour. So I definitely invested a lot of time into the the classes that maybe I wasn't as exciting about, and invest more time to make up for maybe my lack of interest in the subject.
And that was enough time for you just to like learn flashcards for multiple choice tests. And
yeah, it helped that I was also like, when I was working in the athletic training room, I could kind of study for like classes like anatomy, or if I was like a coaching class, or kinesiology. And the trainers that I worked with were good at just kind of giving you like a pop quiz of, what muscle is working during these movements, or what bone or what nerve. And just having surrounding yourself with people who know what you're kind of striving towards and what your goals are was very helpful. And since I was majoring exercise science, even during a practice, I could sometimes be like, oh, I'm gonna ask my coach if I can borrow a couple of my teammates to go and be test subjects in a lab that I'm running
that's pretty cool.
for a stats class, or for like a kinesiology class.
For test subjects, would you have to give them a waiver or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of signing. That was easier to do when it was a D3 program, and I think the coaches were a lot less keen to just letting athletes go and be guinea pigs on treadmills and events.
What are your thoughts on I'm sure you're on the internet, right? YouTube and TikTok.
I was lucky enough to avoid TikTok.
Yeah, me too.
Thus far, at least.
So I post on TikTok. I don't tend to watch it, but one set of videos I like because you're kind of like a chiropractor a little bit, right?
Yeah, we can do adjustments just like chiropractors can.
I always love the videos where they grab the old ladies, and they go, and they give them the really crazy back cracks. You watch those?
Yep.
Yeah. Is that I see a lot of them. How much of that is like professionals doing that versus people just trying to make cool YouTube videos where they really crack people's backs and stuff?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly if they could pair up an audio of them just popping some bubble wrap right next to the camera and say, oh, we got the loudest, craziest cavitation on this patient, and maybe they have a mic right next to their spine. But usually for the person cracking the person's back or causing that pop sound, it's not really that loud for us. It's always, you go and crack somebody's neck, it's 10 times louder for them because it's right next to their ears. So it always sounds way louder for the person having, that, as chiropractors call it, adjustments, versus, the person doing it. You might not sometimes even hear
really
there is a crack. So
really,
yeah.
So those videos, I might be getting fooled a little bit.
Sometimes people do have a really loud cavitation. Sometimes people are cracking and poppy for no reason, and it just kind of depends on the person. Doesn't necessarily mean that person's better at those high velocity thrusts versus the person who barely gets a crack. And there's science to show that you can do that same, as they call it, adjustment without having a pop, and it's just as effective. So
do you like that? Some people like popping pimples. My mom loves to pop pimples, right?
Sure.
And she gets that satisfaction of the pop. Do you get that with the crack too?
A little bit, actually. It's especially when you're first learning how to do it, trying to crack somebody's neck, very technical, and you do it 100 times and get no cavitation or pop, and then you finally get that crack, or you adjust somebody's back and it just kind of has a domino effect down all of their vertebrae, and it's okay, that was cool.
This is nice.
And because a lot of times you can feel it through your hands of that pop.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And what is the pop? I know this is a kind of random thing. I'm just curious about this, but what is that pop? Is that correct me, is that air popping?
So it's it's kind of when you open up a Coke can. A lot of times people will describe it as that pop of release of pressure, or just transfer of pressure. So that's usually how people describe it, as a transfer of pressure within a joint space.
Okay. So when you were in school then, before you went for physical therapy, was there I want to be a physical therapist moment, or did it just kind of happen?
I I kind of decided when I was in high school still that I did want to do physical therapy, but I knew there was also fields alongside that realm that could be very similar. And so I wasn't really like set on necessarily only PT, but I did direct like all my coursework towards something that would set me up to go to either like chiropractic school, PT school, OT school.
Right, but was there like a human element to it? Was it that like, you know, one of your grandmas had a sore back one time and you body slammed her and fixed it? You know,
Not that I can recall.
Flying knee.
Some of my family might have better stories than I do on that, but I knew I wanted to first work with people, and I knew I had kind of a desire for healthcare field, and I wasn't necessarily keen on like nursing. I was not up for like the 10 years of schooling to become like an MD. So I was like, well, I love sports. So I was kind of thinking more towards like either athletic training or physical therapy, and then working in the athletic training room and just seeing the crazy schedules they had of being there for those 5 a.m. lifts, and then being there until your practice gets done at 6 o'clock, and maybe having like 3 or 4 hours off in the middle of the day while you're in class. And then looking towards the future of like having a family someday, I was like, well, I don't know if I really want that career, and the flexibility with physical therapy stood out. So after shadowing and looking into like different realms of physical therapy and the diversity of, you can work inpatient and work more of like a hospital setting, or you can do like a outpatient where you just specialize in like ACLs, and you're just, you know, the knee guy. You can kind of go any way with it, and you don't necessarily need to have like specific like extra education. You could go from an outpatient setting and then you know, quit that job and go and work in a nursing home. So it's nice where in the future, if I get sick of working in one setting, I can transfer to another. Or with my wife's job, we have to move a lot. It allows me to pick up work
anyway.
Whenever.
High demand job.
Yeah,
that's cool. And would you do private practice, or would you just go work somewhere?
I don't know if I would want to necessarily own my own clinic, at least in this stage of my career, in terms of, one, being so new to the field. I definitely have a lot to learn, and also just having that responsibility of being in charge of someone else's paycheck.
You wouldn't like that?
Not yet. Maybe someday owning a clinic and kind of just having like a manager take care of the role of managing people.
You like the crack in the backs.
I don't want to be stuck behind a desk. There's enough paperwork that comes with each, you know, patient you treat, that I would rather spend the time connecting with that patient, helping them along their recovery journey, getting them to whatever goals they have, and kind of seeing and being a part of that journey versus just like signing the piece of paper that comes across the desk.
One last physical therapy question, because Thailand's known for massages.
I'm not looking at your shoulder if that's what you're going to ask.
No, you can. I mean, actually, I have two more. So the first one, SpongeBob, you watch SpongeBob, right?
Yep.
So there's one where they talked about the mailman's paradox. Like, does the mailman deliver his own mail, or is there someone who delivers the mailman's mail for him? Yeah. Do physical therapists, do they trade services? Like, would you know another physical therapist? Like, let's say you had something wrong with you, then you would work on them, they'd work on you, like a barter system, or is that a thing?
There's definitely like exercises you can obviously perform yourself. If I'm like, you know, having some back issues, I know the exercises that are going to either help me progress that back to like a healthy functional state, or preventative, you know, exercises. There's certain things that, you know, that I can't perform on myself, that if I went and saw a colleague, you know, they can do this or that. And even just having like that different insight, maybe they have seen exercises that work really well for other patients that I'm either not doing with my own patients or myself. So just, you know, working alongside those colleagues. And if there's like a veteran that has been around for a long time, I mean, who better to learn from than someone who is like one of the best in the field.
Do you think
So,
they'd charge you?
I think a lot of times they look at it as progressing the field and like kind of passing it on to like the next generation. So a lot of clinics, you have to do your clinical rotations. So those clinics are taking on students who are actually technically they're paying their university to then go and learn from that PT. And that PT is taking on a lot of extra work for usually no extra pay. So they're taking the time to, teach the student versus just maybe cruising through their day and just doing what's kind of normative to them. And so I think most PTs would not charge just for like a one-time, like, oh yeah, I can, do this or that real quick, 5-10 minutes. Now, if it's like an hour twice a week, then yeah, you better actually go and be like a true patient at that clinic.
Right. You're not going to take advantage of the system.
No, and just like their time, like time is money. So
right.
If you're not paying them, then that's just a disservice and to their skill set essentially.
So you went through college, you got your PhD, right?
So it's a DPT.
DPT, acronyms.
Yeah.
So what did that feel like when did they give you like a cool robe, a wristwatch?
Cool might be a word some people would use.
Did you think it was cool?
I use the term, I just got to wear another funny hat.
Okay.
Different funny hat than like high school or
did it have no pinwheel on it?
It did have like a little, what do they call it? Tassel. But you get like a hood. So
that's cool.
Just expensive article of clothing you wear one time.
You're not going to wear it again?
Not publicly.
You wouldn't wear it to an Arby's?
Maybe like the Hardee's in I Falls.
Yeah.
But no, same with like your white coat. You get your white coat and you're like, okay, I feel official now, and you never wear it again.
No. I feel like that would be kind of shocking, seeing somebody walking through Menards with the white coat, being like, look at me.
Yeah, even in the clinic, just like no one wears it.
You wear scrubs.
Yeah, inpatient usually scrubs. Otherwise, it's like kind of like my dad's a gym teacher, so he jokes that he can just wear like sweatpants to work every day, and PT is usually not really much different. Like, gotta look professional, but still be like, oh no, I gotta be able to demonstrate exercises if needed. So
right,
tennis shoes and some semi like golf pants,
golf pants,
something that's
stretchy,
polyester, comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So what did it feel like when you were about to graduate? What was that like? So
graduating was kind of a different feeling because yes, I was done with the school part, but I graduated in August and I had to wait until the end of October to take my board exam, so my national exam. So it was like, yeah, I'm done with school, but now I just full-time job of studying. Like, my job is now to pass that exam on my first try, because right after that exam, I literally took the exam and started my road trip from California back to Minnesota because deer season was starting like a week later. And I was like, well, I didn't get the results back until I was like halfway done with my road trip.
Wow.
So I was just leaving Colorado when all my classmates were like, just hitting up the phone saying, oh, the results are dropping. And so like my other classmates are getting their results, and I'm like, refresh, like 30 minutes straight. And then, just like broke down in the car, just like tears of joy of like, it's done. Like I'm finally a DPT. I don't have to stress anymore. It's just like the biggest weight off your shoulders.
Life is set.
Well, I mean, obviously there's it's still a job, but I knew it was the career that I was going to want to do for the rest of my life.
Wow. And this was on the road trip.
Yeah. So I left the exam in California, drove about 6 hours. So I sat for the, essentially 6-hour exam just to then go and sit in my car to drive 6 hours towards Minnesota, stopped in Nevada and camped outside of this like beautiful hot spring in the shape of a heart. And
artificially shape of a heart or real?
Yeah, artificially. Okay. But it was still pretty cool. So I woke up that morning to like 20-degree weather, was like, okay, this is like a little taste of home already.
Mhm.
Hopped in that hot spring and was like, wow,
I made it.
like I wouldn't have been able to do this 2 weeks ago with the stress of studying. It's like every moment you took was like, oh, but I should be studying.
Right.
It's just like totally took control of your everyday life. Like, I don't know how my wife, Sammy, put up with me for the 2 years of PT school. It's like my chaotic brain.
Stress case.
Yeah.
Did you have friends that failed the exam?
I think our pass rate was around 60% for my class, which most universities are more around 90%. But actually today, some people did not, like, chose not to take it and waited for like the later testing date, but they only offer it, I think, 4 times a year. So some people opted to take it later. Otherwise, people today would be their second try.
And if you fail it,
you get, I believe, 5 tries total, but if you fail twice in a row, you can't take another exam for 6 months, I think.
Okay. So there's some riding on it.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I've been traveling since literally the day I took my exam, and, you know, I had plane tickets booked. I had mapped out all the areas I wanted to go to. My sister-in-law got married to my now brother-in-law. That was in India. So all these events that I had planned, plus I was already on my way to Minnesota. So I was like, if I fail, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go to that wedding, so I'd be studying for the exam like, you know, a couple weeks later. And so not only did I feel like I had my career riding on the line, I also felt like I had the last 2 years of, you know, pain and suffering of PT school. So I did like an accelerated program. So what's normally 3 years, I did it in 2 years. So that doesn't mean like, oh, you don't have to study that stuff. You don't have to study that stuff. It was, no, you still have to study that stuff, but instead of your test being 2 weeks from now, your test is like next week.
Did the stress help you for studying, or did it make it worse? Like, if you could wave a magic wand, which do you think would be better, no stress or stress?
I feel like anytime someone can perform under like moderate stress is good, because it does kind of bring a sense of like seriousness and like commitment and like the weight of that exam. However, like too much stress, then you don't think.
Right.
You know, it's just like any situation. If you're too stressed, you make mistakes, or you don't, you know, catch that keyword in that exam question. Whereas when you're calm and collected, and maybe you just tell yourself like, oh, this is just a practice test, it doesn't matter. That's probably gonna be one of the best tests you ever take because you weren't worried about it.
Right.
So I think the stress has its benefits, but I definitely felt myself age. I probably aged like 6 years in a matter of those 2 years.
Wow. Any gray hair?
My wife claims to have found some gray hairs, but I just lie to myself and say that it's blonde.
It's important to have those kind of lies to yourself. I think it helps.
I agree, and I think that they were just blonde hairs.
So you passed I like that, blonde hairs. So you passed the test. Who'd you call first?
I think the first person I tried to call was my wife. She was in a time zone like 12 hours difference. So what was like the middle of the day for me was the middle of the night for her.
Okay.
And then after that, I called my parents, called my grandparents, some of the in-laws, and yeah, just super happy. Treated myself to a nice Mexican dinner that night. And
quesadillas?
I don't even remember what I had, but I had a reasonably sized margarita. That,
yeah.
You know, when you order a medium and it comes out the size of a fish tank, they must have saw the relief on my face and said, "This guy deserves this.
This guy deserves this." And what's your wife's name?
Sammy.
What's she like?
She's like if you took all the energy of the sun and balled it up to like something in your pocket, but then like had to tell someone like, or like if you weren't able to tell anyone about like the power she possesses. You know, she's the most driven, successful woman I've ever met, most beautiful, talented, and yet somehow she's also like the most humble.
Wow.
So yeah, she's like when people say like she's your better half, it's like she's more than half. Like she was honestly like the whole relationship the last 2 years when I was in school, she was what held us together. seriously. So
What was your first date?
we met at a Halloween party in college, and then our first date, like our first official date, we went to the local Target, or I guess the people in the Falls probably think of it more of like the local Kmart when that was still around. And we just bought like random stuff and went back to the dorm, and we were going to blow stuff up in the microwave. But
Blow it up?
since, you know, you're renting the space, we found a microwave in like the parking garage, took that up to the dorm room, and we were just like blowing stuff up in the microwave as our first date. And then we had a ramen making contest.
Okay.
And she obviously kicked my butt. She's a fantastic cook.
Okay.
And yeah, that was our first official date, which, yeah, some people might find it weird, but it was like that quirkiness and just like uniqueness that was so special. I actually called my best friend. His name's Harry. He lives in Ohio. I called him and I was like laying in my room. I was like, dude, you're gonna think this is really weird, but like I went on the date with the girl I'm gonna marry. He's like, whoa, dude, like I'm gonna be the best man, right?
Yeah.
And like he just like he knew like the seriousness in my voice that I don't think he maybe had recognized before in all of our memories together, where, you know, he knew like that this girl was special, and so did I. So
You knew right away.
yeah, it was, you know, something that maybe I didn't know what I was feeling, but like I just knew that like she was the one. So
What'd you dress as for the Halloween party you met her at?
I was dressed up as like a sketchy truck driver, so I had
Nice.
like the classic,
Nice.
you know, redneck wife beater,
It's a good
tank
move.
top, and like a trucker hat and a crazy like handlebar mustache.
Was the handlebar mustache real?
Yeah.
Did you like prepare the handlebar mustache for months in advance for the trucker outfit?
I think I just had like a standard beard like I do now. I grow facial hair pretty fast, so I went from just a normal beard, and then like the night before I was at a different Halloween event and was White Goodman from Dodgeball. So I had like the long Fu Manchu like hanging off my face.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Exactly. And so I changed that costume into, you know, like it can't be the same thing like 2 days in a row. So I just shaved off the bottom half of the mustache and went with the, you know, trucker style mustache. And it's like, well, I don't have much of a costume at that point, so just cut up an old T-shirt and threw on a trucker hat, and I guess it was good enough to impress her some way or another.
What'd she dress as?
She was like a pack of ramen noodles, but
Nice.
she made it more of like inclusive to women and called it raw woman noodles.
Nice.
And
It's clever. She made it herself?
yeah, she had like a ramen noodle sweatshirt and like had packets of ramen noodles like strapped to her arms and stuff. So
That's pretty cool. I feel like people underestimate the power of a good wife beater.
I think sometimes that's a bad thing.
Yeah. I feel like a good wife beater and like a 12-pack of Mountain Dew either make a lot of good things happen or bad things. I don't know. Fix your transmission in your car, probably.
Yeah, that and you know, a pack of Marlboro Reds, and that person could be like unstoppable.
That's right. Next to Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I don't know. Bottle rocket into space. Maybe not a rocket.
A couple firecrackers or two. Yeah.
Okay. So you finished school. You met your wife. Head back to deer season. What was that like sitting in the deer stand at first? Did you open your morning?
Yeah.
What was that like? All by yourself. You have nothing to do.
Well, it was really like peaceful and like meditative in a way. Just the feeling of like when I pulled in the driveway, my grandpa and my dad came out like into the yard from the shack, and it was like, you know, just felt like, yeah, like this is gonna be just like so relaxing and something that I hadn't had for a long time. So I think that it had been 3 years since I got to spend a deer season at the shack, which for my family is just like we don't really care if we shoot a deer or not.
Right.
It's just the fact of like, you know, everyone kind of just being together and the camaraderie and storytelling, and so yeah, it was just super nice, and it was just a blast. That whole deer season, I spent the whole time out at the shack for the most part, and just great times with family.
Are you the kind of family that like goes out for the morning hunt, comes in for lunch, goes back out, or are you the all day, or what?
Yep.
Do you?
Breakfast at 10 o'clock every morning.
Yeah.
So
You call it breakfast in the middle of the day too?
Well,
that confuses me so much.
First meal of the day. So yeah. I mean, you could call it lunch if for those that enjoy like a Bloody Mary or something, if it makes you feel better about having a drink at 11 o'clock.
Right.
But yeah, it's just like the time of day that we usually come in for the property that we hunt. Usually, not much movement in the afternoons, and then usually watch the Vikings game, and then give you something to think about in the stand if they win or lose.
Do you play on your phone in the stand?
I'm not a phone guy at all. I don't know if it's just like a paranoia of, we're like a shooting lane property. So, you're checking one lane and before you know it, like you see the ass end of a deer walking the other lane. And the decent buck I shot this year, it was that exact thing of looking down one lane, you look over the other and you're like, you just know like that was a nice buck.
Yeah. So
you're like set up in another shooting lane, just praying that they come down that one. And so
how many points?
It was a 7.5 pointers.
Nice.
I call it. This guy was obviously a fighter or something, so broke off one time that would have made it a nice typical 8-pointer.
We'll call it an 8. We're in Thailand.
Sure. Yeah. Just round up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was lucky enough to. Everyone was giving me crap because I was the only one that was shooting deer out at our property. I ended up helping out a couple other folks with their hunting skills. Filling 3 tags last year. So
yeah. Want to hear about my deer hunting this year?
Oh, I want to hear all about it.
So I have a strategy for deer hunting, which is I like to goof off as much as possible. I do a lot of prep work ahead of time. So I stayed out all fall. I cleared all the land so you can see through all the trees, basically. Just kept the big trees.
Yeah.
And I planted food plots and stuff like that. So all the work is done. And then I go to the stand and I goof off. So what I'll usually do is I'll put Netflix right here. Then I got my Nintendo Switch, right? Luigi's Mansion. 3-4 hours at a stretch.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the stand, so they say if you're not in the stand, you won't see anything. So that's step one, is just getting out there.
Exactly. So I was doing that. Luigi's Mansion, Breaking Bad. I had one of the big boxes of goldfish crackers, eating.
Yeah, not the loudest snack, but like enough crunch to let something know you're there.
And keep in mind, I have I don't think deer are as smart as a lot of people give them credit for. I just make noise.
A buck in rut, people say that, you see the videos of someone stopping on the highway and the buck's like 2 inches from the truck.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you can be as loud as you want, and they won't even care.
So what I'd do is I would hunt for a while, play video games for a while. I'd go out and I'd cut down some trees for a little bit. I'd go back in. I'd have a fire outside the stand. And I looked down the one lane and I saw a small buck chasing a doe, shot that. Okay. So I went, cleaned it, went back up to the stand, more video games, more food, playing video games. I look up and then there was a huge, I think it was like a 8 or a 10 pointer.
10. It was definitely a 10.
10 pointer,
yeah.
Maybe 12, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I shot that one too. And then I goofed off the rest of deer season. So that's my strategy.
Shoot your deer early, but then you don't I hope my wife doesn't hear this, but she wasn't around for deer season anyways, but you just don't tell them that you shot a deer so that you can just stay out with the guys longer.
That's exactly right.
Or take your wife hunting and then you can shoot her deer too.
That's right, more tags.
That's never how it works. She'll shoot all the deer and you won't see anything.
That's exactly right.
The women at the shack are always, like my sister, I don't think has sat in a stand for longer than 10 minutes any year, and she shoots a deer every time.
Really lucky.
I think they're just better hunters. They just don't tell anyone about it.
Right. So you got your deer. Did you book your ticket? So obviously right now, for context, I know we've been talking about kind of random, not random, but backstory.
Yeah.
You're at the deer stand. Did you already have your ticket to come here? We're in Thailand right now. When did you get the ticket to come here?
So I think I got the ticket maybe 6-8 months before deer season. So it wasn't to come to Thailand. It was actually to fly into Nepal. I had a little bit of time in between deer season and when my sister-in-law was getting married in India. And so it's like, well, I could spend that time just, watching the temperature drop at home while my wife's away at work, or I can go and do some traveling. Since I was planning to go to India anyways, I booked a ticket to Nepal and did a trek up to Everest Base Camp and used that kind of 3-week period to explore Nepal before eventually flying to India from there.
So Nepal was destination number 1.
Yes.
And had you been outside the country before this?
If you count going to Fort Francis, then yes. I also took a trip with my grandparents on my dad's side when I was a freshman in high school. They took me to Norway to visit with my aunt and uncle and cousins that lived there, and that was definitely like my first time like exploring another country and just kind of seeing that cool experience of comparing small town International Falls to like one, crazy airports,
right.
And then also just like the different culture where you can get like cheese in a tube of toothpaste.
Really?
Just like interesting stuff like that. As like a younger kid, you're like, what? Like there's, you can get any type of condiment in a tube of toothpaste style. Like stuff like that just like cracks you up as a kid, and just like those comparative like learning is something that I think I still love that stuff. Going to a grocery store and comparing foods, or like buying random snacks to try and compare them to, other stuff. I mean, who from the falls doesn't love going to Canada, trying like, poutine or different candies or ketchup chips,
Toblerone.
Like all that stuff makes traveling fun.
Heck, even a Canadian trampoline. You know what I mean? I don't judge.
I don't know what that is, so.
Like a trampoline. I'm sure they have different trampolines in Canada.
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
So, when you got to Nepal, was it because I've seen some Nepal airports. I know they have like a really high up one. Is it?
So, I flew into Kathmandu, and I was that was like one of the first culture shocks was, I don't know if people listening know or like remember like the like t-ball and like pitching machine days over at like the old Holler field.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially that building was similar to their airport, or like the part of back is before they renovated it, like
really?
Just like very old. If there was nobody there, you would think that it like maybe like hadn't been like running for a couple of years. And then the traffic there was just absolutely chaos. It was like if everybody in the state fair of Minnesota was on a moped or a small vehicle.
Wow.
People passing in all directions, like some people being careful because they either have like a child in the car, or like 4 people on a motorcycle. By motorcycle, like a small moped. Like just no traffic lights. Sometimes like a traffic guard just like sitting in the middle blowing his whistle. I think there was maybe some structure to that, but there was no median in the middle of the highways, so people would just pull U-turns in the middle of the interstate. No sidewalks, so everyone's walking with the traffic or against the traffic or across traffic all at the same time. And I mean, I think there's thousands and thousands of people just trying to get 1 or 2 kilometers away, and what would maybe be 5 miles would take like 45 minutes.
Wow. I feel like being careful in traffic here is kind of an oxymoron, because if you want to be careful, you almost have to be aggressive and really
you don't want to be the slow driver.
No.
It's more dangerous to be going slow.
Like Shorewood Drive is not what an intersection here is like.
Not at all.
No. So like, there's an intersection by Hardee's and Shorewood Drive that drives me nuts, because like it's kind of uncontrolled. There's like a yield sign, and I'm always like, wow, this is so dangerous. And then I come here and it's like Mad Max.
Yeah, I'd pick black ice and watching for deer over. I would never drive in Nepal.
No.
Some people, they say, oh, I hate driving in the cities.
Yep.
Like, I've driven in LA traffic. I've driven in, every bit of St. Paul, Minneapolis, Chicago. This was no comparison.
That was culture shock number 1.
If I closed my eyes in Twin Cities traffic and had the GPS tell me what to do, would probably be just as safe as driving in Nepal.
Wow. The other day I was here and I saw a blind guy, right? And he was walking through the street by himself with a cane, navigating the city by himself.
I don't know how.
By himself.
The skill of that man to navigate, and then also just like thinking about like the city, like shame on them.
By himself.
Yeah.
I myself feel pretty capable of walking. I'm not bad at it. I've done it.
And you still got lost.
I still got lost. I almost got hit by cars. And this guy's blind showing me up.
Yeah.
That's impressive. People here are a different breed. They know how to drive. They know how to navigate. And it seems like very like artful chaos, the driving.
Yeah. I made the joke with my father-in-law when we were in India, because that driving was to me chaotic as well. And we were joking, NASCAR doesn't know what they're doing. They need to be recruiting people
Right.
from Nepal and India. They'd be the next Bobby Labonte.
Right.
You know, like,
was the lane cutting or lane splitting a shock for you at all?
splitting it'd be more like dicing. You know,
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah.
like just, you know, in between rows of cars. It was cutting people off, zigzagging through.
Like a slap chop.
Oh, it was it was just every direction there was a motorbike. You know, it was faster for people to drive the opposite way of traffic because they would have had to turn around.
Mm-hmm.
So people just drive like a mile on the wrong side of the road.
Absolutely.
Motorbike, car, walking, didn't matter. It just, you know, yeah, the thing they did.
So why did your sister decide to get married in India or Nepal?
Yeah, my sister-in-law, she's in the Air Force, and she met her now husband, and they live in Germany, and he is from a place called Tamil Nadu, India, kind of in the south near Chennai. And so they did an American wedding, but Indian weddings are so big, it took them literally a year to plan everything. And so it luckily allowed me to do planning of my own, to be able to go there and experience all of the culture on his side of the family. And so yeah, she met her person who just happened to be from India, so they did both American wedding and Indian wedding.
My brother and sister-in-law also live in Germany. Kind of random fact.
Maybe we can go there next.
We can go there next. Let's do that. So how long after you landed in Nepal did you go up to the base camp of Everest?
The total trip up to base camp was 2 weeks, and then I spent another week just exploring like the area of Kathmandu.
And you're going all around. And if you ever need a break too, just let me know.
Oh, I've been talking more than I did in the last hour than I did in the last 3 months.
Do you need to get a water or anything like that?
I think I can pull it together.
You can pull it together? Okay.
Yeah.
So did you like have anything organized when you first went to Nepal? Like, did you like know who was going to get you up to the base camp? Did you just kind of wing it? Did you?
I did hire a guide, but it was all just through like WhatsApp messaging. And luckily for me, the only people in my group, all the other people had canceled, and it was kind of towards the end of the tour season, like the guide season. So it was me and the guy.
Okay, we're back recording.
Testing.
Mic check. We're good to go.
Testing.
All right, we're back. We had water. Throat was dry.
Yeah, it sounded like I swallowed a frog.
Couple frogs.
Yeah.
So you just got to Nepal. You met with your travel guy through WhatsApp. Was that sketchy at all?
Only in the fact of they were like, yeah, just look for a guy with a sign, and then you get off the plane, and it's like, you know, no one's speaking English, so you're trying to like, I had to they only do visa upon arrival there, so I'm like trying to like get all this like documentation stuff figured out, which wasn't difficult. But then you become the most popular person in a lot of those countries not because, you are this or that, or like you're good at this or that. It's all because they see you as someone that's coming to spend your money. So, which is good. It's good for the economy, and I mean, everything's super cheap and affordable there for us. So it's like a win-win. But but within the 100 yards of walking from there's only one gate there, I think, for the international terminals. But within that 100 meters, I think I got asked if I needed a taxi maybe like 40 times.
Wow.
It's like, taxi, sir, taxi. And it's like, just keep your head down, shake your head, and just keep walking.
Do you bow there?
Yeah, namaste is like both a blessing and a greeting.
Okay.
In like the Nepali culture. So, like upon like entering a building or something, usually there's someone greeting you, and after someone like delivers a meal or something at a restaurant, very like culturally standard.
And do you have to get to base camp? You have to hike to base camp, right? Or how does that work?
From Nepal, I flew into what was referred to as the most dangerous airport in the world.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah,
that's
so
the one I was talking about.
The shortest runway. I'm sure there's like technically shorter runways, but in terms of like commercial flying, it's the shortest runway, and it's on the side of a cliff. So they took the runway and they put it at an incline so that when the planes land, they're actually like going uphill to slow down the plane. And
correct me if I'm wrong, there's a building right on the other side of that.
Oh yeah, it's just like right into the building. So by the time your wheels hit the ground, the pilots are already like getting prepared to turn into like essentially like the plane parking lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that scary?
Scary in the fact of like you can't see the pilot, but it's a really small like someone told me it was like a 1970s plane with twin engines. It's very similar to some of the planes on like Rainy Lake that are used for like fishing guides, stuff like that. It's called like a twin engine otter plane.
Okay.
But
like a puddle hopper.
Yeah, and so there was, I think the plane fit 12 people and then the 2 pilots, maybe 16 people at the max.
What was sketchier, taking off or landing?
I think landing was scary because sure, like they speak Nepali, but as we were landing, all I hear is terrain, and I'm like, I just hope that's the runway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all of like the accidents that have happened at that airport have been due to weather,
right? Or
like the other, I think 1 or 2 cases were like pilot error, but now like any form of weather, flights canceled or delayed. So even when we were leaving, there was like very minor fog, and I was like, oh, like the flights are delayed because of this. Like that makes me feel a lot better about like I wouldn't have even thought twice if they said, oh yeah, flights are running still. Like, of course, like I would have expected it to, but the fact that they're still delayed despite like a little bit of fog, and it wasn't even fog like near the airport, it was fog like halfway in between the flight pattern. So they take it very seriously and have a lot more precautions than they used to in like the early 2000s and even like 2016. So that was reassuring that they've taken a lot of precautions since the tourism's gone up a lot.
Was there a lot of people when you got there?
At the airport, in the local airport, a decent amount, but there's still only one gate, so like it's just condensed, I guess. Pretty similar to the International Falls Airport, where like not much for seating, so like you're either on the next flight or the flight that landed. That's it.
Same kind of size.
Yeah, exactly, pretty much the same. And since I did the trek in the end of November into the start of December, and so it's getting cold, especially at the higher altitudes. So in terms of the tourism, it was nearly like the end of the tourist season. So it was kind of nice to not have what some people say like a parade up to Everest. And
I've heard of those.
And now, since it's like even to summit Everest, which I went up to just under 18,000 feet for Everest Base Camp, and then higher on a day hike up to 18,200 feet. But people make the joke that you can buy your way to Everest,
right,
like to summit Everest, which the Sherpas and like all of the team, they do so much work that like you couldn't pay me enough to be a porter.
Wow.
The porters, what I was told was they get paid around $35 US dollars for the trip, which for me was 12 days on the mountain.
Yep.
And so for essentially 2 weeks pay, it's like $15.
And they have to buy their own gear.
Yeah, like they people are like, oh well, but like stuff is cheaper there, but they want the real deal stuff because it lasts so much longer.
Yep.
A pair of shoes might only be $5 to buy there in a store, but they're gonna fall apart in like 2 or 3 weeks for them.
Right.
And they're not, like I'm just carrying my little like 10-pound backpack, and then here comes Sherpa with, flip-flops, maybe like a cigarette in his mouth, and like giant wooden boxes on his back. I watched a guy carry, it was 15 4x4 10-foot long boards on his back walking up the mountain.
Wow. How far do you think you could carry that?
I could carry it a lot farther going downhill when you watch me fall on my face and roll a couple feet. But just the amount of skill and strength and knowledge that all those people in the area had, it was like there's no doubt in my mind that like whatever those guys say, I'm going to do it because they're the experts. I don't care if I agree with it or not. Like if I have a slight headache and they tell me to drink this tea, like that it helps with acclimatizing, it's like I'm not going to question it.
You're going to do it.
Exactly. So those guys were definitely the experts. And in terms of like the grand scheme of Everest, I didn't even scratch the surface. Like technically I wasn't even on Mount Everest.
Really first base.
Like I stepped up to the plate, but I didn't even see a pitch. Like just the area that I got to was essentially like driving by Everest.
Wow.
So like I didn't even get to pull into the driveway.
Wow.
And
that took you how many days?
12 total. So it was around 9 days to hike up and then 3 days to come down.
And what'd you eat on the way up there?
I stayed in what's called tea houses, which is the standard, kind of like a hostel, except there's no heat in any of them. So You're staying in these little bunk bed dorms with no heat. So it'd get down to like 20 degrees Fahrenheit each night. So you're sleeping with like your electronics and your water to keep it from freezing. And then it was nice because the guide service I hired, your food's included in the price, and you just get to pick off the menu what you want. So if you're feeling like some type of soup one night, you can order that. Like dumplings or what they call momo was always just like safe bet.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it was almost like pierogies.
Sure.
Like Midwesterners are familiar with that. And the whole time I was going like vegetarian because nothing's refrigerated on the mountain, or even in Kathmandu for that sake.
Other than you.
Yeah. So even though it was cold during the night, during the day, it was still getting around like 40 degrees or so. But
you don't want to get food poisoning up there, boy. No,
it was definitely a big risk. A lot of places don't even sell meat once you get higher up the mountain because one, they don't want the liability, and it just everything's brought up by either person or mules or yaks. There's no motor vehicles, even in like the small towns. There's not even bicycles because the terrain's just not equipped. And the yaks and mules bring up a lot of things like propane or like either like feed for the animals or like rice and flour, but the people have to carry up like I watched a guy carry a full oven, like stovetop oven, on his back up the mountain.
Jeez.
And I'm like, why can't they just put that on like the back of a yak? Like the yak's stronger than a human, but they can't navigate the trails. So not only do you have to have the muscle, but you also have to have the brain power to be able to navigate. Otherwise, the yaks would just pretty much lay down and say, no, I don't know how to do that. I don't want to do it.
Right. And you're not going to have a grizzly four-wheeler ripping up there.
No, it just wouldn't make sense in terms of the gas, let alone the maintenance of the vehicle. And it's also just like a very cool way. I don't think this is why they do it, but just to see everything that's there was brought up by a person.
Wow.
Every brick, every board. There are helicopters that drop materials, but it's cheaper to hire a person to do it than it is to pay a helicopter.
Right.
For a helicopter ride, just one way is $1,000 US.
Wow.
So another reason why I was not going to risk food poisoning was...
You didn't want to have to get hauled back.
No, it was not in the budget. And I also promised my wife I wouldn't hop on any helicopters. So
Right.
There's that as well.
So what was it like getting to base camp?
Base camp was really cool in the fact that you're hiking right along what's called the Khumbu Glacier and the Khumbu Icefall. So you can hear the glacier moving like 30, 40 meters away. And then you get there, and in all the pictures of Everest, there's like all the tents and everything, but that's during the summit season, whereas all of the trekking for tourists that just want to go to base camp is all in the off season. So there's no structures at Everest Base Camp. There's not even a single tent there. It's just there's a bunch of like Buddhist prayer flags and the famous Everest Base Camp rock, which is kind of in the shape of like lima bean or like the Chicago bean, and it's just a giant rock sitting on the glacier. And so then in the wintertime, when there's actually like snow that people can walk on across that area of the glacier, it's just filled with tents for like a couple hundred yards, just people living there, full structures that they bring up there every single season. Just for the climbers.
Wow. So after you went to base camp, where'd you head after Nepal?
From Nepal, I went to the northern part of India, went to see like the Taj Mahal, Delhi, India, which I thought like cities were a thing, going to like, all the cities in California or Minneapolis, but Delhi is, I think, ranked the third largest city in the world of around 35 million people. The Twin Cities isn't even 1 million.
Wow. 35 times bigger than the cities.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if you count, all the towns around the cities, then it might hit 1 million. But St. Paul and Minneapolis, population-wise, is not anywhere close to that city. It was insane. To go 5 miles, it took me 2 hours.
5 miles, 2 hours. Would it have been faster to walk?
Maybe, but there's no sidewalks. So if you want to carry all your bags and walk through traffic,
it's like Frogger.
It's literally like Frogger.
Wow.
And so I just sat patiently in my Uber. And
how much did that 2 hour Uber ride cost?
Probably around $3. So
wow,
it's affordable, but the traffic's there's just so many people in one place.
And air Uber and B, you're in there for long enough.
The air quality, some places listed on like the Apple weather app, but usually in Minnesota, like 35 is like pretty standard, good air quality. There, it was maxed out at 500. So it was 500 out of 500 on air quality index. And
I think it's like 100 here today.
If you were standing on one side of a football field, I wouldn't be able to see you on the other side.
Jeez.
It was like something out of like a zombie apocalypse movie.
Wow.
And so I felt like I had smoked a whole pack of cigarettes just from breathing in the air. Like, it just felt like there was toxin in the back of your throat.
Wow. Would you go back there?
I would, in the case of like there's so much to see that I barely scratched the surface. I just would make sure I went when the air quality was not during like they're like burning like the crop fields and stuff, which added to all of the pollution, and the 35 million people doesn't help.
No. What was your biggest culture shock when you first got there?
I think just like the traffic was a big one, because the first thing you do when you get to a new country is, get a ride or a taxi to wherever you're staying. And that ride each time, both from Napal to the hostel I was staying at, and also the ride from like the Delhi airport, just like, wow, that driving is nothing like Minnesota.
Nothing.
Not even close. I think any 4th of July bass tournament, like all of the traffic in International Falls, if you condensed it to one city block.
Wow. Every single car.
Every single road, yeah. There's more people per city block in Delhi, India than there is in all of International Falls.
4,000 people, you think, per block?
Easily, yeah.
Wow. And how long were you in India for?
Total of 3 weeks.
What was your daily routine like? Or were you pretty mobile?
I stayed in Delhi for only like 4 days, and then went down to meet up with my in-laws in the more southern part of India. And a lot of that was just exploring and like getting to know the culture. A lot of the family friends of my brother-in-law showed us around, brought us to temples. Like, those temples are over 2,000 years old, all like hand carved by hand, everything man-made. It was just like nearly impossible to wrap your mind around that, like this huge like 6-story temple was hand carved out of one giant rock. Like things like that in the US you're like, oh, that bridge is beautiful, right? But it was like, engineers
Tobacco did it.
Exactly,
right.
This is like
I look
older than what you even can like perceive mankind to be.
Right.
So the culture was just the most unique experience that I think, I still, out of all the countries that I've gone to on this trip, was the most unique in terms of culture. And I also spent the most time there, which was definitely a contributing factor to the impact that country had on me. And I know like my in-laws were discussing it too, just how unique that experience was.
Right. Did you meet people over there, like make friends?
Yeah, a lot of the people that were helping out with the wedding, they also were very kind and generous of like showing us around and making sure that we were comfortable, that we were able to indulge in, different foods, and taking us to restaurants and temples. The hospitality was just phenomenal, and so grateful for their family taking that time.
Okay.
So the culture in India was the most impactful in terms of my traveling. Sure, like after that, I went with my wife's family to Sri Lanka, and the wildlife there was unreal. We saw wild elephants on a safari. We got to feed sea turtles on the beach by hand, like just feeding them seaweed while we swam with them, and like seeing, lizards and snakes and all these creatures. That was phenomenal. But like wildlife is unique in itself, but nothing was as impactful as the culture, for sure.
Yeah, meeting the people, seeing the food.
Yeah.
One thing that always strikes me when I travel is, again, being from such a small town, that's the whole world.
Yeah.
That's the whole world. It's the only thing that matters. It's for, that's how it was growing up, right? And then I go to these different places and you see these millions of people, and realizing that each of these people has a life. They have goals, they have desires, they have ambitions, they have fears, they have dreams. And that's always
that's always a really neat feeling, realizing how insignificant I am. And it really grounding to say like, huh, I am not the only person here. That's always been that's always something I always take away when I travel, is that like there's so much more going on than I naturally would think. Like
Yeah.
how little the day-to-day stressors matter in the grand scheme of things when you go somewhere like that has 4,000 people per city block. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Every one of those 4,000 people is as important as us.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree, and I feel like each person's experience, even if it's someone's first time to Menards,
Mhm.
like that experience and that new, like, just taking in all that new information is unique and important all in itself, and it's just like there's no experience that's like more important or like more life changing than another. If that's impactful to that individual, then that's just as important as going to a country that has crazy drivers, or hiking up a mountain. It you know Someone's Mount Everest could be someone's Bronco Hill.
Yep. You've only been through what you've been through.
Exactly, and the hardest thing you've been through is the hardest thing that you have been through. So
Exactly.
it's like it's so much fun to talk about like these different experiences, but like just happens to be my experience, and like you said, in the grand scheme of things, like my experience is so small compared to the rest of the world. So
Yeah, and that's where I think it's important just to live a life that you enjoy, that makes you happy, to be good to other people, to be kind, try to be humble, try not to overstress the little things, even though that's obviously really hard to do sometimes. Um, but I'm very grateful for the people. Like I was telling you earlier, the locations for me don't really matter. It's
Yeah.
the people, like you, like Venus. It's pretty cool that we get to meet these people and do these interactions with these people. As far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
mountains and stuff, cool, interesting, but the people and their experiences and how they feel about the mountain is way cooler to me than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. It's a special part of traveling that I wish part of my travels was spent in like one location longer,
Right.
to dive deeper into those connections and those conversations. Although it has been a lot of fun to be able to have, in a way, more of those conversations, just not on like the deeper level.
Does it feel like you're kind of moving to a new school every time you switch locations?
I don't think it'd be like as scary as that. I think it's more so of like sitting down for like a dinner meal with someone who you haven't met, then like connecting, but then like once the food runs out, then it's like on to the next one, which it's like a bittersweet. Like I'm happy that I got to have those interactions. A lot of times I just wish I could have had like more. So trying to like stay connected over social media, or like email and stuff is doable, but like it's not the same.
Right.
So
there's that song Willie Nelson, On the Road Again. That
Yeah.
song. And he says like seeing people I'll never see again. Does that ever kind of sit with you like, I'll never ever see that person ever again?
Yeah, there's a lot of sad truth to that realization. However, it's just kind of part of the experience of like, even that is beautiful in itself, because knowing that you probably won't see that person ever again allows you to appreciate like those conversations, and not just like talking about the weather,
Right.
because like that conversation may be important during certain times, but it allows you to appreciate those deeper conversations for what they're worth and appreciate them. And it almost makes me want to have those conversations more
Right.
during those times, because like I appreciate those deeper conversations way more, knowing that I probably won't get to have that conversation with that person again.
Right. So you had 3 weeks in India, went to your sister's wedding, sister-in-law's wedding.
Sister-in-law, yeah.
You went, is that where you went snorkeling or scuba diving?
No, so after Sri Lanka, I went to Malaysia just for like a week, and then up to Thailand. And the southern part of Thailand, a lot of islands, a lot of like beaches, and so I did a little bit of like beach hopping, and it's pretty touristy. But I went to a couple of the islands.
Phuket?
I went to Phuket and Krabi.
Okay.
Then I went over towards the more eastern islands near Koh Samui is a popular one. Koh Phangan, Koh Tao, or Koh Tao. Some of the pronunciations,
Right.
You know, I'll probably never get to
Almost need
pronounce them right,
phonics.
yeah, or just need to find some locals to just say the words for me.
Right.
And at Koh Tao, I met up with another guy from Minnesota.
Really?
Had dinner with him. He taught in Wyatts with my mom, so she was like, "Oh, if you want to meet this guy," I was like, "Absolutely, I want to meet him." You know,
Yep.
Like it's cool. Met a lot of cool people during my dive certifications there, and I was grateful that I got to spend more time. I opted to do a more advanced dive certification after I did my beginners, just because I loved the area, I loved the people that I was meeting, and I didn't want to just like hop to the next thing.
Right.
And I loved the diving too. It was like a whole other world that I'd never experienced.
Are you going to keep diving?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try to do a couple of dives in Vietnam when I go.
That'd be sweet. That'll be sweet. What kind of like into like a limestone crevasse or something cool? Or
I'm hoping to be able to see some. I got to see one World War II shipwreck.
That's cool.
That was like permanently sunk or purposefully sunk and permanently sunk, but purposefully sunk for like the purpose of like fish and coral conservation.
Yeah.
And then in Vietnam, we'll be able to see some shipwrecks from I think from the Vietnam War, or I don't know, haven't seen them yet. So that would be cool.
And you got bites from
I got a bunch
fleas?
of I guess some people call them like sea flies or sea lice, but just a bunch of like mosquito bites essentially that
got the lice.
Eventually, yeah, I got the lice.
You got the lice. You're the people stay away from you. You got the little comb.
So it's essentially just like a mosquito bite that is from the ocean, and some people got a couple of them. I guess they like the Minnesota blood,
right?
So
it's thick. It's thick.
So yeah, I survived. You know, I avoided any food poisoning or anything like that, but got on the water for 4 or 5 hours every day, and they just chewed me up.
Wow, that much per day?
Yeah, for the dive certification, we were doing around like 3 dives every day. So.
Sweet, that's really cool. And then you went from there directly to Bangkok, right?
Yep, and spent a couple days in Bangkok. Then, so that was 8-hour bus ride and a ferry, and then the 10-hour bus ride up here.
Right. And yeah, you got here last night essentially. This morning. Yeah. This morning, yeah. Yeah, it's been a long day for me too. I worked till about 2:30, and then not as long as for you, but I got up, met you here, hung out. Tonight we're gonna go with some friends to a temple up that direction. That'll be really cool.
Yeah.
And then after here, what are you gonna do?
From here, I don't know why I did it to myself, but I scheduled a bus back to Bangkok where I'll hop on another bus about 4 hours later. So I got the 10-hour drive to Bangkok, get a quick meal, get on another bus for 10 hours to Cambodia, and then from Cambodia, go down to Vietnam for a little bit, and then up to Laos, and then I'll finish by going to Vietnam again, just for I gotta experience Ha Long Bay. It's like,
what's that?
It's essentially an area on the coast of islands, and it's almost like the floating islands in Avatar, except you're surrounded by like these crystal blue waters.
Wow! So
looking forward to doing maybe do a couple scuba dives there, but I'm gonna do like a night boat, like 2-day stay on the ocean there, and do some snorkeling and kayaking and experience that kind of more northern part of Vietnam.
And then after that, then
Then I gotta get home and start working.
start working, make money.
Yeah.
Do you think will you miss it?
Oh yeah, I think I'll never be done exploring, but all those trips have to pay for themselves somehow.
Right.
So, yeah, I'll be working in California for a little while, and then when my wife's duty station changes, then we'll move somewhere else, and the exploration opportunities will be different. And yeah, I have no idea what it looks like yet, but I know I'll definitely be finding new places and different hikes or climbs or dives, whatever the case is. So.
A few questions in closing. We kind of covered the whole like your saga, what it was like, your life growing up, how you got here, the trip, everything like that. What are your biggest like culture shocks that you've experienced on the trip? Like,
I think a big one is the way people get around. Nepal, it was, the roads being very different, and then on the mountain being totally different, of just how people have access to transportation or lack thereof, and how like that affects their life, but it doesn't affect it negatively. It just affects it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rich culture of both just like the Buddhist culture, Hindi culture, Sikh culture in India, Muslim culture, all of those cultures, and like how rich in history all of those has been something that in America, I mean, besides like some cool cathedrals and stuff, it's such a diverse culture that it almost appears to be diluted in a way compared to like the rich history of culture of seeing 2,000-year-old temples,
right,
or these giant Buddhist monuments. And I think that was just at least a very unique thing that I got to experience. And so I've gone to a lot of temples because of that, and just like the beauty of the Taj Mahal and all these structures that are backed up by like rich history and culture. And then you got to mention the food. Anytime you're traveling to a new country, the food is like a really quick and fun way to dive into the culture.
Yep.
Experience something new, and like, I don't know, it seems like the Midwest thing to do,
right,
where
yep,
you bond over food, you can experience new things over food. So I think those three things have just been some of the takeaways of traveling that I've loved.
Okay. And last question too on closing. I always really like this question. It always grounds me for sure. Reminds me what's important, right? Pretend that you have 2 weeks left to live. Something went wrong, got hit by a moped. Speaking of that, I got to bring that up. You see right here.
We don't have to show.
Don't want to show that? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Want me to cut that part out?
That was in Phuket. I hired a guy to take me on a motorbike, and I knew I wasn't adequate to drive, or I just didn't want to, but I probably would have been safer. And so little scrape on the knee, nothing major, but yeah, I don't really care for the motorbikes after.
That's enough of that. Evil Knievel.
Yeah.
But let's just say that
learning moment.
Let's just say that Wyatt had 2 weeks left to live. What would you do?
The adventurous person in me would say like, oh, I want to see as much of the world as I can. But I think when you have like a timeline like that, all I would want to do is surround myself with family and around those connections that I have made. And if that's the plan of 2 weeks, just enjoying the moment. And honestly, I don't even think I would want to tell anybody. I think I would just want everyone who wants to be around me for who I am and what I'm about, let them be around me, and I'll enjoy my time with them, and just I think it's important to almost treat every day like that, because I mean, it very well could be your last day.
Mhm.
So treat every day like that, then you hold nothing back, and what's done in the end is done. So just the summer camp I went to on Rainy Lake always has like the famous saying of "seek the joy of being alive," and if you do that every day, then I think those would be the best 2 weeks.
That'd be ideal.
Yeah.
Very good, Wyatt.
Thanks.
You're there. That was fun.
Yeah.
That was a
Thanks
lot
for
of fun.
interviewing me.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun actually.
I enjoyed that. Thank you for sitting through all that.
Well, maybe I'll be the camera person. You guys can.
Yeah.